Resegregation? Wait, what? I thought segregation ended a long time ago. ... Nope, like most people, you thought wrong. Although segregation legally ended in 1954 with Brown v. Board of Education, this does not mean that social and locational segregation ended as well. Here is my brief synopsis of segregation in U.S. history. During World War II, which the U.S. was involved in from 1941 to 1945, black soldiers were only allowed to serve in segregated units. The jobs these blacks received were among the lowest on the totem pole. The Tuskegee Airmen were among the few who were allowed at the front lines, and they provided glory for the blacks of the nation. Not a single plane was lost in their protection. There seemed to be a glimmer of hope found in this air troop, retaliating as best they could against the beast of segregation. Much like the Tuskegee Airmen, Jackie Robinson made a name for himself in 1947. 28-year-old and war veteran, Jackie Robinson was brought up from the minor leagues to play for the Brooklyn Dodgers as the first black player in the major leagues. The country was strongly divided, but many whites and blacks saw this as a racial move that was long overdue. In 1948, the presidency was finally in support of civil rights. A once very racist Harry Truman decided that black lives needed to be protected as well. He vowed that the federal government would act to end discrimination, violence, and prejudice against blacks. Now, as we know, this had some extent to an effect, but not all that it had intended. Brown v. Board of Education is where racial segregation was legally conquered. Finally. Well, for the meantime at least. On May 17, 1954, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled unanimously that racial segregation in public schools violated the 14th Amendment, aka that no state may deny equal protection of the laws to any person within its jurisdiction. This also stated that separate educational facilities for black and whites were inherently unequal, which also brought to light the idea of Plessy v. Ferguson's separate but equal of public facilities. So that's the end of segregation then, right? I mean, it was deemed illegal to have separate public facilities. Then it seems strange now that some parts of the U.S. are as segregated as they were 50 years ago. The highest point of integration was actually 1988, and although busing worked well in the beginning in an attempt to solve racial segregation, it seems we've backslid. U.S. public schools are nearly as segregated as they were in the 1960s. By the time black students even enter the 8th grade, they are already academically 3 years behind their white peers. This is difficult because districts no longer attempt to integrate like how they were forced to after Brown v. Board. It appears that racial segregation is a hush-hush topic, and much like any other hush-hush topic, if we don't believe it, well, then we don't need to fix it. Whites have moved to better areas of higher income, while blacks and Latinos live in urban areas with poor school funding. Whites have even set up school redistricting and re-outlining in order to carve out school boundaries for wealthier students. It is apparent that low-income kids attending low-income schools are performing at much lower levels than poor kids at middle-income schools. With this decline in integrating public schools, apartheid schools, or schools that are less than 1% white, have nearly tripled since 1988. Just because segregation is no longer legal does not mean that it gives us the credibility to ignore it. Segregation is still very much alive today.